So this is the first lecture for the drama course, and I'm still not great at doing these recordings, but I will do the best I can. And so today I want to introduce the course, and I want to talk a little bit more about the plays, the first two plays that we'll be working with. And one is Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House, and we will be using that throughout the course. And the reason for that is because it's the book that um, Mick Wallace and Simon Shepherd continually refer to in the book Studying Plays. Um, and that is the core text for this course, along with, of course, the plays that we are studying. And then I'm also going to be talking about A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams from 1947. And so getting you a little bit up to speed on who Tennessee Williams was and why that play is important. And we're also going to be talking about one of the interpretive lenses that Wallace and Shepard talk about in one of the last chapters of the book, actually. And that is chapter 7, Culture and Interpretation. And on page 198, there's a very through 202, so it's not very long. There is a, a short discussion about interpretation. And we are going to be looking at the portraits of the men. And if you read, uh, really, oh, well, all right. So let's take a second look at studying plays here. I think actually a lot of the chapter will be helpful for you in that. They ahead of the bit on interpretation, they talk about critical approaches and character analysis, image analysis, reader response criticism, historical and cultural approaches. And what we're going to be doing is a blend of a historical approach and a character analysis, because we're going to be looking at what close reading is, how to actually read a play so that you can say something substantive about it instead of just having a general opinion. Uh, and so we are going to look at the portraits of the men of Torvald in A Doll's House and Stanley specifically in A Streetcar Named Desire, and comparing them with each other. And also looking at a play that you're not reading, which is The Glass Menagerie, also by Tennessee Williams, that he wrote a couple of years earlier. Well, he started it a decade earlier, but he wrote it, finished it a couple of years earlier than A Streetcar Named Desire. And in it, he has this third type of man in it from the 40s. And so we're going to be looking at and comparing those different types of men and how they are created on stage. Or we're going to be looking at how they're created on paper. And then I'm going to be talking a little bit about then the effect of creating them on stage. And you are going to be able to see them created on stage or see at least A Doll's House this week. And then you can look at A Glass Menagerie next week. Unfortunately, The Glass Menagerie, well, I will be posting links to 3 different versions of A Streetcar Named Desire. But one of them is a film version, and it's a very good film version. And so I want you to be able to see that. One is a theater version, is a stage version, and it's a newer version. And I think it's quite good. And the third version, I think, is also another stage version, but a a more of an amateur acting group, if I remember correctly. But I will be looking more closely at that. I just wanted to give you some options of newer versions and earlier versions of A Streetcar Named Desire. Also for you to take a look at how they can be created differently. There is one version that I have given you a link to, and it's on digitaltheater.com, and it's a new modern version from London, from the stage on London with professional actors. It's absolutely brilliant. Um, for, oh, that's, well, see, this is why I don't like doing these lectures, because then I can get a bit confused. But anyway, that's for A Doll's House. And it's a beautiful version of A Doll's House. It's a brilliant one, but it does cost money to see it. Not that much money. I think it costs like 99 crowns or something. And for that, you can get either just you can take a 1 month subscription to digitaltheater.com and see several different plays, or you can just pay for the one play and watch that online. But those it's a brilliant opportunity, and they do a wonderful job. All right, but we'll look more at that, and I will be giving you correct details and the right details on Blackboard. But for now, let's move on a little bit here. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the course. And so week one of the drama module is now, and over the next 5 weeks, we're going to learn how to read plays, not just as stories, but as scripts for performance and what that means, and how a play then is different from a novel. And studying plays in the first chapter, they talk about that. We're going to read the plays as culture texts, as sort of little snapshots of their time and of issues and things that were talked about and discussed at the time, and also plays as sites for conflict exploration and interpretation. Because one of the cliches, but that's a true cliche, is that you don't really have a story worth telling unless there's some type of conflict in it. And traditionally, the conflict will get solved in a satisfactory way. That's not always true of modern stories, modern storytelling, and I'm sure you're aware of that from watching a lot of streams online or television. Plays are different from novels because they don't usually today contain long passages of description or internal thought. What we're going to be looking at is older plays, and when we later read That Face or look at Coconut, you'll see that they're quite different in terms of how much stage direction they contain. And again, Wallace and Shepard talk about stage direction and the fact that stage direction is given before a scene to show where are they and what does that place look like. And then stage directions can be given before someone speaks to say how do they say it, what type of voice, or stage directions, who they are looking at or not looking at if it's important. And in modern plays, there's less of both of those things because directors and actors like to have more freedom. And so dramatists tend to put less of it in unless it's very, very important to what's going on in the scene. And it differs from dramatist to dramatist. Dramatist is someone who writes plays. And we're in Stage directions can also, though, be found in the dialogue itself, and that's really key because information there might include what they are wearing, if they are looking down or up or walking. It can include movement directions, it can include gesture directions, it can include clothing directions, it can even include age and sex and a lot of different types of directions that the actors and director need to be aware of so that they're not contradicting those with what's actually going on stage. All right. Plays also tend to work more through dialogue and action than novels. Novels contain dialogue, and novels today contain more dialogue than Charles Dickens novels from the 1800s. But still, there tend to be only dialogue in a lot of plays and stage directions then. And then there is the performance. And the performance can be very, very different. That's why you can see the same play over and over again. And it's never going to be exactly the same play because who the actors are matters, how they say their lines matters, how they are framed on the stage matters, what kind of clothes. There's a lot of things that play into how we as an audience interpret what's going on. Um, have seen a Shakespeare play from the 1500s called Titus Andronicus, performed in Washington, D.C. This was it was before Trump's time, before his first period in office. It was during Bush's performance in office. It was after 9/11, though, so it's after 2011, and or after uh, uh, it was after. I think it was after 2011, but it was after 9/11, so it was um, after 2001. Sorry, after 2001 when 9/11 happened. Um, and they were in a lot of the actors were in yellow jumpsuits for Guantanamo Bay, and that actually worked very, very well with the play, with the content of the play, because it is a play about authority, it is a play about power plays, it is a play about resistance, it is a play about hierarchies in a lot of different ways, and about one of the main characters of the play, Titus Andronicus, is very violent. And so it worked very well as a commentary on what was going on at the time. And I think it must have been, I must have seen it. It was, if since it was commenting on 9/11, it was probably in direct relation to that. So maybe 2002 or yeah, 2002, because I was in the United States in 2002. So that would have probably been it. Anyway, all I wanted to say was that Shakespeare plays have been performed across the world, and usually his plays are modernized often, made historical frequently, and made local for the local context almost all the time. And it's very, very interesting to watch how his plays can be handled so differently. And to a lesser extent, that's true of a lot of plays that are made even today. Um, but let's take a look now. To help us, we'll be using Mick Wallace and Simon Shepherd, Studying Plays. It's not a history book, and it's not here to tell you what a play means. It's a handbook that gives you tools how to think about plot, how to treat actors as cultural figures, how to analyze dialogue, how to connect plays to wider social issues. And throughout the module, throughout the drama module, you'll see how the ideas from studying plays match up with the plays we're reading. And hopefully you'll be able to do some of that matching yourselves as well. That's what the tasks are for. So week one, we begin with plot and the question, what makes a play different from a novel? And that's how we read, how we get the information about who the characters are. That a lot of it we have to take through what's implied in the dialogue, for example. So using A Streetcar Named Desire, we'll look at how plot introduces characters. And plot here is what? Plot is how the story is told. So we can have a story, but it can be told, it doesn't, not necessarily told in chronological order, not necessarily told from, a novel is usually told from one character's point of view or two different characters' point of view in different chapters. But when we're looking at a play, it's like we are like we have a camera into the room and we can actually see what's going on. So we get more of an observer point of view. How then is our view directed? Our view is directed by who is speaking, of course, but it's also directed by light, for example, where the light is shining on stage and what is put into shadow. Uh, and in terms of relationships, we are looking not at descriptions of people's relationships, though we sometimes get those. We're looking at how relationships are acted out in dialogue and how they are acted out by where people are standing in relation to each other and how they are standing or sitting or moving in relation to each other. And so we're going to be looking at how A Streetcar Named Desire opens versus how A Doll's House opens. And week 2, you'll be practicing close reading of Blanche, and I will be looking at Stanley. We move, I will do a model reading of Stanley, and you will do a model reading of Blanche, or you will do a reading of Blanche. Okay, week 2. We move to characters, and studying plays will help us think of characters as both functions of plot and as cultural persons. Uh, and cultural persons means representative of cultural types, and they can have more or less depth, more or less um, personalities that sort of breach the confines of a particular character type. We'll read more of The Streetcar alongside Susan Glaspell's Trifles. Trifles is a play that I put up on PDF on Blackboard. It's a one-act play, so it's just 9 pages long, but it's also an older play, but it's very much a good play to look at in terms of character analysis and what types of ideas people were talking about in relation to the roles of women and the roles of men and perceptions of women and perceptions of men and their interactions with each other. Um, all right, and then week 3, we're shifting to dialogue. And dialogue isn't just conversation, it's action. And so we'll explore how ambiguity and power are built into language in Shanley's Doubt. And Doubt is a play about the Catholic Church. And it was made into a movie with Meryl Streep and Black. His name is Black. I'm not remembering his first name. A very excellent actor. And it's available. The trailer, I will put up a link to the trailer, and it's available on different streaming services, or should be. And if it isn't, it's also available to rent or to buy if you want to watch it. It's a very good version, but again, it's a film version and not a play version. Week 4, we will stay with dialogue, but think about performance and pauses and gestures and tone and how they play into construct power and how they play into character dynamics and interaction. You'll have a creative choice of tasks, or you'll have a choice of tasks where you can choose one that is more creative and others that are more straightforward. In terms of not requiring you to create a scene, but there is one that does require you to do that. If you want to choose that one. And week 5, finally, we will focus on culture and interpretation and look at studying plays chapter 7 more closely. And we'll be using Polly Stenham's That Face and and ask how plays reflect and challenge their cultural moment. This will lead directly into your final essay, but in your final essay, you will have the option to write about a different play. All right, so let's take a look at it a little bit more. The structure of the course is fairly straightforward. There's foundational concepts every week, and they pair with the play, and there are tasks for you to do. Each week has one specific task that's part of the examination. You can do the task anytime you want throughout the course. And they all have the same hand-in date, which is the final date of the course, which is the 9th of November, but you can absolutely hand them in before. If you hand them in before, I will give you feedback. I will not give you a grade, but I will give you feedback on what you hand in. And this does not include the second task because that is a quiz. And the quiz you can do as many times as you want before the 9th of November. And then on the 9th of November, whatever grade you have on that is final. You'll see from the schedule also that the tasks are weighted differently. One is worth 15% of your grade, one is worth 10% of your grade, etc. All right. So keep studying plays by your side, read it every week, the readings for it, and think of it as a toolkit, as something to help you understand how plays work and how plays can be read. If we then move into Henrik Ibsen and A Doll's House, um, studying plays uses that play all the time as a point of reference. And if you watch the play, it will be much, much easier for you to follow along in what they mean and for you to think about the play and how that works on stage. So I would definitely say watch the play. So I put up a link so that you can do that. Uh, they return to Ibsen when explaining how to think about different aspects of drama. Henrik Ibsen is important in everything from dialogue to staging. He was very innovative, very creative, and A Doll's House is considered one of the most influential plays in modern theater. He was a Norwegian playwright born in 1828, so 100 years ago. He's often called the father of modern drama. And before Ibsen, European theater was still dominated by melodrama and stiffer conventions, and it became more realistic with A Doll's House and after A Doll's House. A Doll's House was premiered in 1879, and he introduced something new that became very, very important, and that's psychological realism, along with the contemporary settings and dialogue that sounded like real life. His plays put ordinary middle-class families on stage and asked difficult questions about marriage, power, about the roles of men and women, and about social expectations. And he talked about family finances. All right. A Doll's House shocked audiences when it first appeared. The story follows Nora Helmer, who gradually realized that her marriage is built on control and illusion. It's based on performance, on pretense. The ending, when Nora leaves her husband and children to seek independence, was considered scandalous in the 19th century. Today, it's recognized as a key moment. The play is recognized as a key moment in the history of drama, one that helped launch modern theater's focus on social critique and individual identity. Which is still what happens in plays today. We look at group identity, but we also look at individual identity and how it's shaped by groups and how it's the groups we belong to, um, and the societies we belong to, and the conflicts between individuals and the group, and individuals and society, and between society and groups. So when Wallace and Shepard use Ibsen's play as their example, they're not just picking a convenient case study. They're pointing us to the playwright who made it possible to study plays in the way we do now, as complex works of art that reflect and challenge the culture around them. That's why A Doll's House remains central, not just to textbooks, but to the study of modern drama. So in any drama course, any introductory drama course that you have, A Doll's House is more than likely going to be part of the course. If we look at, let's see if I can help you do this. Let's see here. There we have. All right. I'm trying to get a, no, that's not what we want. This is what we want. All right, so let's see if I can help you see this. Share. Uh, no, that was not share. All right, so here we have it. All right, I think now you can see this handout, which says Henrik Ibsen and A Doll's House, a timeline. And here you have details about Henrik Ibsen and his life, and you will see again that he was born in 1828 and died in 1906, and that he wrote A Doll's House in 1879, and that's when it was, or that's when it was premiered. Well, what we then want to look at is the cultural context of his life. And 1848, when he was 20 years old, there were revolutionary movements sweeping through Europe, and there were debates about democracy, rights, and social change. And I think we recognize that from today. Um, and then 1850s to 70s, the rise of modern middle class life, growing attention to marriage, family roles, and women's position in society. They were being increasingly debated, and a lot of politics was dealt with those issues. 1870s, women's rights movements emerge in Scandinavian Europe, calling for education, legal reform, and equality in marriage. Voting rights would not come, for the most part, until the early 1900s. 1879, A Doll's House premieres in Copenhagen, igniting controversy by showing Nora leaving her husband and children. 1880s, the woman question becomes a central theme in public debate across Europe. So his play is definitely a product of its time. If we then talk a little bit about A Streetcar Named Desire, Tennessee Williams is one of the most important American playwrights of the 20th century. He was born in 1911 and grew up in the American South, and many of his plays draw on that setting. And what does that mean? The South is a more conservative area of the United States, and it is a more uh, yeah, I think that pretty much says a lot of it. His family life was turbulent. He had a domineering father, a fragile mother, and a sister who struggled with mental illness. Those experiences of conflict, repression, and vulnerability shaped his writing, and the issues will crop up in his plays. None of his plays are strictly autobiographical, but a lot of autobiographical information find their ways into his plays. Williams' plays are known for their intensity, their poetic dialogue, and their focus on fragile characters caught in harsh circumstances. He was especially interested in people who live on the margins of society, outsiders, dreamers, or figures trying to hold on to old ideals in a changing world. And if you remember that and think about that in relation to Blanche, you'll definitely see connections there. Um, his most famous plays include The Glass Menagerie, A Streetcar Named Desire, and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And Cat on a Hot Tin Roof is playing in Gothenburg right now. It's playing through the fall here. So if you want to see a real play and you have an opportunity to come to Gothenburg, I would suggest seeing that. It is a great play, and I have great expectations of it here in Gothenburg. I'm going to see it in a month or so. All right. Each play explores themes of desire and power and family tension and the clash between illusion and reality. And A Streetcar Named Desire premiered in New York in 1947 and quickly became a landmark of modern drama. It tells the story of Blanche Dubois, a fading Southern belle, a fading Southern woman. And belle means a debutante. She's used to belong to the upper class, but her family has lost their money. Because what does it mean if you belong to the upper class in the South? It probably means that her family made their money through slavery. And then when slavery ended, they lost a lot of their income, lost a lot of their income base, and that had effects in the family. And one of those effects is, of course, that they were no longer financially solvent. And she comes to stay with her sister Stella and Stella's husband Stanley when she loses their house, which their house seems like it was a Southern mansion. It was called Belle Reve, or Beautiful Dream. And that should sort of clue you in a little bit about the connections to common themes in Tennessee Williams' work. And she comes to stay with her sister Stella and Stella's husband Stanley in a cramped New Orleans apartment. From what I can tell, it's a two-room apartment. A two-room apartment in Sweden would mean two bedrooms and a living room and a kitchen. A two-bedroom apartment in a two bedroom apartment in Canada and the United States would mean the same thing. But a two-room apartment is not that. It is a one-bedroom apartment because two rooms means the living room and another room. All right. The play is about much more than family conflict. It stages a collision between old and new social orders, between illusion and brutal reality, between residual and dominant cultural forces. And this idea of residual, which means what's leftovers, if you will, what is still there a little bit, and dominant, what's there a lot, and what's in focus, what's the main thing. Cultural forces. And we're going to be talking about residual and dominant in relation to the men in the plays. The play also pushed boundaries. At the time, it dealt openly with sexuality and violence and mental instability. Its mix of lyrical stage directions, beautiful language in the stage directions, and raw physical confrontations created something new for audiences who were used to more restrained theater, more decorous, more held back. Today, A Streetcar Named Desire, not all plays written before this were restrained, but they were more restrained than his plays, particularly the plays that appeared in the 30s, but not all of them. It's a complex area because the politics of the time was complex. Today, A Streetcar Named Desire is studied not only as a classic of American drama, but also as a play that raises questions about cultural values for men and women, class, culture, and change, and the fragility of identity, or how we present ourselves and how we identify. How much of our identity is caught up with our education? How much is caught up with our jobs? How much is caught up with our community, with our family? And if it's caught up with our family, what does that mean? What does our family identify with? Who do they identify with? What do they identify as? Okay. And if we lose those foundations, what does it mean? All right. And for different reasons, then he explores how identity can be threatened. It's both a deeply personal play, Williams once said everything he wrote was autobiographical, and a sharp cultural portrait of post-war America. Do not read autobiographical as he portrayed his mother, his sister, his brother, his father. He puts parts of them in his characters, and we recognize that when we know his biography. But we can't say that it is them. There's a difference there. Or that he's saying this is what happened between them. We can't say that either, even though we can say that he was familiar with these types of issues. As we read A Streetcar, keep in mind Williams' ability to balance poetic stage directions with raw physical action. And we're going to look a little bit at that. And the combination is what gives the play its lasting power. All right, I'm going to talk about Raymond Williams, but I'm going to do that in a second video clip so that you can watch one and then watch the other, and perhaps watch the second one more than once would probably be a good idea in order to understand more about Raymond Williams. Before we do that, I want to just take a look at a timeline for A Streetcar, and let's see if I can share that with you. All right, so here we have it. Streetcar there. All right. So Tennessee Williams, born in 1911, attended university and began writing plays in the 30s, but he also struggled a lot with illness at the time. In 1944 was the premiere of A Glass Menagerie on Broadway, and it does make him into a major new playwright because it is very successful. 1947, a premiere of A Streetcar Named Desire in New York. And then we have it's made into a film with the same actors. If I remember correctly, it is at least Marlon Brando. And I have the film version. I have a link to that. I hope that you can see. I'm going to double check with YouTube that the link is still there. Hopefully it is, but I'll check. And then 1955, he does A Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and wins the Pulitzer Prize. And in 1983, he died in New York. So that is 40 years ago now. But he was alive for most of that century. The cultural context, his life is marked when he was 19 years old, Wall Street crashed. and the Great Depression started to shape America. When Wall Street crashed, a lot of people committed suicide. More people lost their jobs and lost their homes. And so you had mass homelessness and mass poverty in the United States. And drifters became a common feature of society. And drifting had been illegal, but after 1929, there was no way that they could put all the people in prison. And a lot of people who were drifters would have welcomed it because then they would have been fed, would have had a roof over their heads and would have been fed. 1939 to 1945, it was a World War II, and millions served abroad, and that changed society at home. One of the major changes in after the war or during the war was that a lot of women started working outside the home. They had worked outside the home before that, but many, many more started working outside the home and in job areas that had been dominated by men. And that when the war was over, a lot of the politics was about the women going back home to welcome their husbands or their brothers or their fathers. But of course, a lot of them had died, or a lot of them came home so damaged that they couldn't work. And so the women needed to keep their jobs. And a lot of women weren't married and wanted to keep their jobs. And a lot of women were married but wanted to keep their jobs anyway. So it created a lot of cultural conflict. And then we had celebration in politics and a celebration in popular culture of the 1950s with these popular shows with the happy families, both historical families like the Waltons, but also popular shows showing modern families with mothers at home when they had children. And that's where a lot of the ideals that people talk about today, they come from this 1950s period. But that was a more a political move than an actual reality in terms of statistics and working and what women needed financially at the time, if you start looking into historical data and historical archives. So it's an interesting time period. And then we have, the ideal in the 1950s was for Americans was to own a home. That had been an ideal for a large part of American history was to own your own place, own your own land, or own your own house, and then to own a car, of course, in the 1950s, and a TV. Okay. And it built up this ideal of family life. 1947, A Streetcar premieres and capture the post-war tensions on stage and post-war tensions for the South. And that sets sort of that play in its context. Stop share. All right, so I'm going to end the first part of the lecture here and then come back in the second part and look more closely at Raymond Williams and the three plays.